Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this lovely live stream with some lovely members from the audio team. I've got Maud Ian with me.
Hello.
And Maud Surma.
Hello.
There we go. Oh, smooth intro as always. I'm loving it. I'm Surma Poerkie myself. I'm on the community management team. I don't know why I wanted to specify that as well, but I did. Before we get into the very lovely meaty stuff about audio, how it's made, and show some of the amazing works behind the scene that the team has done, we're going to go back for the last time, or the second to last time, to watch Twitch Prime. Because it's currently the last week you can get it. Next week we should have something new and shiny, so make sure you get it. It's 14 days of free membership, and you'll get, if you get Twitch Prime, you can also have a Twitch sub on one of your favorite content creators as well, so make sure you use that too. Now we've got that out of the way, we've done the necessities, we've done the cool intro bits, we can start talking about audio, and I'm quite hyped about this live stream. I always love chatting to you. If I used to do live streams towards the JegX, the audio department is the #1 stop. It's also
we like talking to you too.
Exactly, we love spending time there, and I think 1/3 of the time we probably spend at the audio department as well. It's always a pleasure. But before we dig into it further, I would like to know a little bit more about both of you. So would you like to introduce yourself, Maud Ian, to begin with?
Yeah, so I'm Maud Ian. I'm the oldest person in the world. No, I'm the oldest person, the oldest employee at Jagex. So I was the first external employee at Jagex, and I've been doing the audio for, well, all combined, audio, customer support, and everything like that. It's going to be coming up to 18 years now, so quite a long time.
That is a very long time, and I'm going to throw in the fact as well. The reason that in this current age of Jagex, that all the Jagex employees are called Maud and then have a Maud name, originates from Maud Ian, because initially the Gower brothers only had the names Paul, Ian, and I'm going to feel now, I forgot the third Gower for a second.
Well, Andrew.
Andrew, thank you very much.
Most
Probably the biggest one of all. Yeah. They had their own names, and then Ian joined, and they needed a way to separate that, so they decided to put the word Maud in front of the names, and that's how we got our modern day Maud, and then add the name. Cool fun fact. Cool.
Yeah.
Who are you, Maud Surma?
Hi, I'm Maud Surma. I work with Ian. I work with Maud Ian in the audio department, and I have been at Jagex for just over 2 years now. So not quite 18 years, but maybe getting there, you know. And yeah, what else really is there to say?
I mean, you can give a fun fact about yourself. I know you play quite a few music instruments. You make music for both old school and RuneScape. Like you're kind of a jack of all trades. So is Ian, to be fair.
He's an amazing colleague and a brilliant musician.
And he's always very enthusiastic as well.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, yeah. So, doing audio for trailers, audio for RuneScape, old school, any kind of marketing material which is required. That's something which usually comes my way, and yeah, that's what we do.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about all these facets. Yeah, I mean, everything that needs audio gets passed through you guys.
Pretty much everything that comes into Jagex, it comes through our grubby hands before it goes out to the outside world.
The only exception is probably Twitch, but that's because it's live. Everything else you guys have a hand in. Cool. Shall we start having a little bit of a look at archaeology then, and how it kind of happened, and what the audio team did to make it as amazing as it was? Cool. The first question I wanted to dig into is there are tons of sound effects in archaeology, and I would like to hear a little bit about the process, how we got those sound effects, and where did we get them from, and how did we make them?
You'll have to apologise. That froze completely for me, then, so I didn't get any of the question.
Oh, did I drop?
Video.
I don't know.
No, it was just the whole thing just froze.
Cool. I will happily repeat
Sound effects.
Yes, basically sound effects. How do we make them? Where do we think of? And what kind of approach did we take for archaeology?
Well, one of the main things when working on archaeology is obviously you need to do lots of things like digging, excavating, all that kind of stuff, brushing your samples and things. We didn't really have the sounds that we needed in our sound library, so we had to either make them or find them, get them somehow. So that meant basically that we needed to go on a trip to go and record some some chipping and brushing and whatnot. Obviously, not being very practical to kind of like start crushing rocks up in the house or even in the office. So yeah, that meant that we wanted to go to a place called Grimes Grave. So we could have a little picture of that, perhaps. This is a Neolithic flint mine that's not far away from us in Thetford area, basically.
And I think it's also just worth mentioning that this was actually obviously done before the whole lockdown happened, which is actually one of the last opportunities we got to do some outside field recording.
Sometime last year, wasn't it? Yeah, beautiful, glorious sunny days. Yes, it was. That's right, like late sort of summer, wasn't it? Yeah. Unfortunately, can't go back. Well, I think it's open now, actually. But yeah, so that was the. Looking at that, obviously, it just looks like a lunar surface, but underneath there are various mines for mining flint, the stone flint. So we've got a couple of other little things to show.
Out of curiosity, is there a reason why the location has all these kind of holes in that? Is there like a reason
that's the mine. Yeah, it's the mines. I don't know if you know
the surface.
Yeah, there's the material flint, which is some sort of quartz silica based rock, black flint. There's a big vein of it that runs in the UK, in England. Basically, it's just, you can't kind of get it all over the world. And these obviously this is Neolithic, so it's very, very, very old. And a lot of those are kind of filled in and grassed over now, but it used to be loads of open pits there.
Sorry, am I not right in saying that that this pit in particular was one of the few kind of public accessible pits in Europe or something?
Yeah,
I think it was very, very, it's not like every day you can just go down to one of these kind of mines. It's quite a good opportunity for us to go down and get some really cool sounds.
Wasn't just for a jolly, was it? Although we kind of obviously tried to kind of make a kind of decent day, because if you're going out kind of doing sound recording all day, you want to kind of like, enjoy the day. But one of the main reasons is because it's nice and quiet around there in the middle of a field. You're nowhere near the motorway, you're nowhere near an office or a room full of servers or whatever you've got bleeping away in the background. So that's the reason why we chose to go there. In fact, we might want to let's have a look at the media that we gave you, and we should be able to see Mr. Surma descending.
Never again, that's it. Never smile there.
So both of you went in the ground for this as well?
Yes, we did. There's another little clip of me doing some recording down there, but I mean, it seems kind of like really extravagant, to go to all this effort. But this is what sound designers really, that's part of their job. I mean, if you can't kind of very easily manufacture a sound, you have to find it. You have to get it from somewhere. A lot of the stuff that we do is obviously really creative. We'll mess about with different pieces of sounds and synthesizers and recorded voices and everything. But if you need the sound of someone sort of, brushing a piece of rock, you may as well do what you're going to see on this next video here.
Ah, yes. Having lots of fun here.
Audio team hard at work here.
So that's just me banging flintstone against flintstone.
And then you record all these different sounds from there, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, once
Yeah.
we're kind of done, we've got a whole bunch of them that we need to kind of go through. But they've got some really good qualities. So you know, a sound like that little clinky sound, you could turn that into a huge, great big kind of, you know, massive axe, or you could turn it into a tiny little sort of toothpick or whatever. Once you've got a source like that, you can do a lot with it.
So this trick
That's Mr.
really was to
Surma.
kind of get new source sounds in the library, and then you can work
This
from
is just
those.
the raw source.
Exactly.
We've got a really good sound library with, you know, a couple of 100,000 sounds which have purchased in, and we keep adding to it all the time. So, you know, whenever we get a kind of major project, we always, and we're short of sound effects, we'll always try and record new ones.
And so, you know, you have to really play with your, you know, with your tools here, like as if it wasn't like an instrument, for example, like a musical instrument. You've got to kind of, you know, play around, throw the rocks on the floor as I'm doing, or brush a rock even with a brush. I mean, it sounds bizarre,
Yeah.
you know, but that's how you get these kind of different textures and sounds.
Well, that's right. I mean, you have to try and match the animations and the actions in the game as well. So, you know, there's no point in trying to, you know, you find a recording of someone that's kind of, you know, brushed like a great big long streak. That's absolutely useless for what we wanted. So we had to purpose make these short brush sounds that we didn't have in our library.
Yeah.
And were these recorded on that location as well, at the location of the mines, or is that just a different location again?
Oh no, that's where Mr. Surma was there. That's the entrance to the mine there that we went down.
Okay.
That's just kind of outside because they've got a little demonstration center there, basically, where
I think we were
the
quite
curator.
lucky because on the
Let's carry on.
I think we were quite lucky because, like, on the day, I think, well, we're lucky that we went really early, so there's like no one there, so we had the place to ourselves, and, you know, we could use stuff like public benches to put our rocks down and to you know, play with our rocks. Benches. So we can, you know, play with, you know, with no sound, no interference from anyone else, and you know, and the chaps who were running the site were really helpful, and, you know, gave us the rocks that we needed to you know, get some good sounds. So it was
Yeah, they were
it was a really good and
there,
productive
actually.
morning. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah.
Excuse me.
I saw someone comment on the chat as well. Like, there is a small delay, so if we talk over each other, that just will happen to us. No worries about that. I'll also quickly address the bit about the chat about asking for an open Q&A again, or us communicating more. It is something that I personally can't comment on right now. We are aware that all of you'd like to see more communication, and progress is being made, and that is internally communicated as well. And that's kind of all I can say on that matter. I know it's probably not what you want to hear, but we'll have to leave it at that. We are talking about audio and about what makes the audio team so amazing. So we'd like to comment on that quickly. Going back to the audio, if you go to a site, you're going there to record audio. Is that also to get a little bit of like the feeling of like getting an impression of what the sounds could potentially sound like? Or
Well, yeah, I mean, anything that can kind of, you know, immerse you into a situation and kind of put you somewhere close to where you want to be, then that's great. I mean, it's when we were kind of first working on this project, I was thinking about where can we get sound effects, and I was just kind of looking around, doing some Google searches of nearby places, and I came across this place and thought, now that sounds ideal, because if it's quiet enough, that's all. One of the main problems is always background noise. So the idea that if we can be in the middle of a field away from nowhere, or potentially down a mine, then, you know, it gives us better scope to get these sounds recorded nice and quietly.
yeah, absolutely. Shall we listen to a couple of the sound effects sounds? Soundy
Yeah,
effects? How do you
absolutely.
Sound effects. Audio.
So if you want to just play
Noise.
the pick sounds first, because one of the obviously thing that you need to do that you can hear them in the background.
Okay.
They're tiny little sounds, but we have to always give lots of random variations to sounds as well, because obviously you're chipping away repeatedly doing this action. You have to record a kind of bunch of them. I think we use 16 that can normally be used at any one time when you attach the sound to an animation.
Mm-hmm. And these will then
Perhaps you wanna-
randomly just play.
So they're all kind of like grouped together and then put into the game scripts to run when they should. And perhaps you want we've got the brushing sounds there as well. So some of that stuff was done with the rocks, and some of it was done in a forest as well, so we could get some extra kind of dirt and leaves kind of quality to things.
Because you do not always match, like the sound that you use is not always the same as what it is in reality, right? It's
no,
a mix.
we turn sounds into all kinds of things. In fact, we had a meeting earlier on our team, and there's a new sound library which is giant pine cones, and the sounds that you can get from giant pine cones, and some of them sound like absolutely crazy kind of monster creature type things. You wouldn't believe it. So you have to be super creative. Yes, you can use, a piece of paper or a piece of plastic or wood or something. You'd be surprised the amount of different sounds you can get out of just a small amount of sources.
It usually tends to be that when you, like, for example, I don't know, if you want the sounds of two swords clanging against each other, it's not that, you would think, oh, okay, so if I want the sound of a sword, I'll just go and record a sword. But it's not always that simple, because in reality, the sound of a sword clanging against another sword is actually quite boring. So you need to find other things to kind of spice it up. Like maybe get some metal, maybe get a metal sheet, or anything really that could like really enrich that sound experience.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, you got to think creatively.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking back, back to the days of Ranch Out of Time when I was doing my dog recordings. I'm not going to find baby dinosaurs anywhere in the world, so what's the next best solution? I think some dogs might help me, and it was really good. So you just got to find you got to think the bigger picture in a way, and just kind of get these ideas and how you can feed it into your own.
That's one of the great things about doing sound design, isn't it? Is that it forces you to have to use your imagination. You can't just rely on just sticking a microphone on something and your job's done. That's just one small part of it. I think there was one more video to show, wasn't there, of me actually doing some recording down there in the mine. Did we get that one? Oh no, it's the one walking. Sorry, maybe I haven't.
I think there should be one of Modian doing some.
We definitely have a video of Modian. Yeah, we've got the time. It's not in a rush. I heard from our producer that we don't have the video from you in mind, so I don't know if that's something you can access and then upload onto the drive quickly, and it's something
the most
we can
exciting
play.
thing you'll ever see. And I don't think you'd lose too much sleep.
From I'm interested now.
I can't remember which one it was. Well, we can throw it in. We can throw it in at the end or something like that, because we've got some other bits and pieces for you to see and hear.
I had two more questions on the sound effects side. So you mentioned you use similar sounds. What are particular things you look for in a sound for it to be similar enough for it to be used? Is it like a certain pitch? Is it a tempo? Or
you've kind of got to match the kind of key qualities, if you like, the key aspects of something. So with that picking kind of thing, I mean, it had to be that we had to deliberately sort of I had to say to Mod Surma, okay, can you kind of just repeat that with a gap in between, a little bit shorter, and you have to kind of direct the recording as you go along, because you have to imagine in your mind, unless you're watching a video or something, you have to kind of imagine how things are going to fit with the stuff that you've seen, the animations and the game content. So yeah, we look for things that have got kind of similar qualities, similar sort of frequencies in the sound, or energy in the sound, something like that.
Totally, and I think it's really common to think of it as being quite a mechanical or formulaic procedure, but in reality, when you're recording your sounds, you've really got to perform it. You really got to perform how you want the sounds to be heard. It's very much like a performance. It's not quite, yeah, okay, bang, got my sound, let's go home. You really got to kind of act it out and
But that's what gives
that's a
things
key
their
word,
authenticity, and that makes them work properly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Which do you want to say something, Surma?
I was just thinking. I think back to the questions. Like one of my all-time favorite examples of sound design is the bullets in Saving Private Ryan. A little bit off topic here, but in the bullets and the film Saving Private Ryan, they aren't actually bullets. They're just fishing ropes, like that, and that gives them that kind of sound effect, which is in my opinion just genius. Like how do you think of that? But it worked out really well. So yeah.
Okay, I mean it's a perfect bridge to the question I was going to ask. Like, what's your favorite sound effect that you've made for RuneScape, and then secondly, what's the weirdest sound that you've used for a sound effect that you don't think it would be used for, just like the example you gave to Jagex Surma?
Well, I've given a example, Martin. So perhaps if you've got something in mind.
Well, a favourite sound effect? I don't know. I mean, some of the stuff we do for old school is really quite good fun, but that's a completely different discipline. I mean, my favourite sound effects are probably creatures and things like that, and atmospheric stuff. I think that's the kind of thing that I enjoy the most, where you have to be creative. And I think some of my favourite kind of things that I work on is when I use my own voice, because I've actually used it dozens of times just to make lots of different. I mean, I've also got some VO in the game as well, and I do voice a couple of bits of characters here and there. But you'd be surprised. My kind of like various different mouth sounds have just been included in a whole host of stuff. So that's I think those are some of the most kind of enjoyable sounds for me, when you get to record kind of real people and then you process those sounds and then you come up with something kind of cool, hopefully.
Can you give an example of where your voice is used as a sound effect for one of the characters or items in game?
I can think of one from you, Modin. If you, if I'm correct, like within like the first week I was in Jagex, I think you were recording. Oh no, the name's left me. Is it Pieces of Hate? No.
Yes.
Captain.
The boss. Yeah, the end boss for Pieces of Hate quest.
Rapids? Something. Oh no. Rabbit Jack.
Well done.
Rabbit Jack. That was,
that's me. I'm Rabbit Jack. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. Yeah, I just remember launching into some sort of piratical, like, oh, here we go, and all the rest of
it. Like, how does that happen? That's amazing.
That's really cool. I'm a professional pirate, So.
Yeah.
Full-time Jagex employee, part-time pirate.
What do the people say in the market traders' background in Alcarid? Don't know, because that's actually a recording from a Middle Eastern country. So I'm not too sure, sorry.
Oh.
But that's a found sound.
Any favourite sounds from you, Surma?
I have to stick with my guns and say that I had such a great experience doing the sounds for Ranch Out of Time and recording all my dogs. That was such a cool experience. I have recorded recently, which I really want to use but haven't had the opportunity yet in game. Is I have a violin bow, and I took a old music stand, so like a bit of metal, and I scraped the metal against. So I scraped the bow. So I bowed the piece of metal, and it has this really kind of like really low kind of sound. And that's I'm waiting for a good opportunity to use that sound. I haven't used it yet, but who knows? Maybe in some new updates, I might be able to get it in. So keep your eyes peeled, keep your ears peeled. Can you do that?
Keep your eyes peeled.
I'm sure you'll get it in. I'm sure you'll get that in at some point with Surma.
I'll probably turn into something completely different.
A couple of quick questions from the chat before we're going to move on to the archaeology music in general. How much of the sounds are like properly mixed together, and how much of them are just like kind of just recorded and kind of put into the game? How much is that as a
Actually, a
percentage?
good. Can you just show the audition session picture, please? I thought I'd just include this. So that basically all those little tiny lines, each one of those is a single recording there. So there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bits, basically excavation, the brushing and the scraping kind of thing. So they're all sort of separate elements. So once we've kind of been out, we come back with, SD cards and whatnot full of all these hundreds and hundreds of recordings, and then it's basically a bit of a slog to kind of go through them, to throw away all the ones that are no good, and then to sort of process them. So that is what we do when we get the raw assets and the kind of stuff that we have to work with, and then it kind of gets further refined down and down and down. I can't remember your original question.
I just want to go to the second question. You refer to this picture as Audio Edition, wasn't it?
Oh, Audition. That's the program that we. Adobe Audition is the program that, well, it's one that I choose to use for doing the sound design. Yeah. Those are not
I was
Audition.
just imagining that you would put those sounds and they kind of had to audition to be good enough to go into our sound bank. At least that's how I imagine the story.
Some people have actually auditioned for some of the sound effects in the game. I remember, years ago now, I redid all the sound effects for the vampires. So there was the juveniles and the juvenates and the adults, and I actually got loads of people in across the company. I think I had 9 different people in, and I fed them all Maltesers chocolates, got their throats nice and dry, and then stuck them in the recording booth, and there you go.
Loving the story so far. Cool. But the question that was initially asked, like, how much of the sounds do we mix? Like,
of course, sorry, apologies. So those sounds there, I mean, once you've got those individual elements, they will be made up. One sound could be various different little bits that are all cut and timed and stretched to fit. You can only really do that when you've seen the animations in the game. We're working with the tools, and we're working, in the content itself, and then you can kind of start to time things up. And then a sound can be anything from, okay, that one little bit of recording there, we'll just use it as is, to you use 20 different elements, and then you mix them all together with all sorts of things, and then process them on top. So it varies, but on the whole, there's usually a lot more that goes into designing as well as recording. That's about a third of it.
Okay, I mean,
there's quite a lot of processes. You kind of do the recording, and then once you've got the recording, as Ian just showed in Adobe Audition, you find yourself having to layer a lot of sounds up, and then doing like various things like effects, like maybe some reverb or compression or EQ, and all that good stuff. So it's definitely a long process.
It is very rare for a sound to be recorded to basically go straight in game, I imagine.
We would tend to not do that. And if it's appropriate, then that's fine. But even those little pick sounds, I still had to edit them. I couldn't just take them and just put them in. They still had to be cut up. Then you have to kind of normalize the volume of the sounds, and you have to make sure that nothing's peaking, and then there's no no one's coughing in the background, or something happened where might have knocked the microphone. You have to audition all this stuff, and then you still have to kind of stretch them around to make them fit. So even with a real tiny little picky sounds like that, there's still extra amounts of work that goes in.
Okay. Another question, I think you've already hinted towards it, IanT. Where is the question? I copied it. Nightingale Zero asked, do you guys get to see the animations before you make the sounds for them?
Yes. I mean, not 100% of the time, but it's difficult to kind of work without seeing things. We do work from concept art a lot, though, especially if we're making our own kind of concepts for music, let's say, or we want to try and kind of do some early design on a character in a game, a boss or an NPC. Then we can work from the concept art as well, because we get a good selection of that, and that's one of the things that really kind of pulls you into the content and gives you the the feel and the atmosphere of what you're working with. But yeah, normally we would use exactly the same kind of tools that the artists use to build the animations and make the game world maps, and we use a bit of everything here to do the audio.
Okay. You wanted to add there, Surma, or you just fully agree?
Well, yeah, I'm just absolutely. I'm just thinking because when you don't have an animation, you work blindly. In essence, but when you do have an animation, you can see so many things about it. You can see like the size of a character. If he's if he's kind of a strong character, you can get an impression of whether your sounds need to be kind of dense and thick, or if they're just quite light and loose, maybe, or calm and gentle. So an animation tells you so much. So much. So it's really quite crucial. Without it, you are essentially working blindly. You don't really know what you're working towards.
Also, you might have to kind of work with the limitations of what's going on with the tools and the game engine. So you might not be able to kind of put a sound in where you expect on an animation. So there's sometimes a little bit of sort of tinkering with the tools to get things to kind of work properly. That's all part and parcel of our job.
Okay. I mean, all the things I'm hearing I just find highly fascinating, and half of these things I didn't even think of, like, before I listened to the audio, that these are all like taken into considerations and a part of that.
It seems like such a huge amount of effort, doesn't it, to kind of like brush a few pieces of rock on the floor, but the sum is hopefully kind of like a bit better than its part, greater than its parts. And the one good thing is that no one really whinged or complained about the sounds for Archaeology, which is always a result for me, because I generally tend to measure my successes on how many people moan at what we do, rather than tell us that they like it. Not strictly true, but no one kind of turned around and said those Archaeology sounds are really annoying and repetitive, which is that's actually a good result.
I mean, I would like to take it a step further. I would say, like, indeed, I've only seen a lot of praise for the audio itself in general. Which brings me also to the question: Do any of you two have an idea how many sounds and new tracks we added for Archaeology ish?
Yeah, I can just total it up for you quickly. Actually, whilst if you just carry on talking, I'll just quickly total those up for you.
I mean,
so I've got the files in front of me.
Cool. I mean, then I'll remove that. That was from Quest 57. That question. I'll ask this one to you, Surma. I'm pretty sure you'll have a good answer to this. Merds RS asks, what's your opinion on people who play the game with any game sounds on?
What's my opinion of those people who play with sounds on?
Off. My fault.
Oh, off. Well, off. Well, you're definitely missing.
Dare they?
Well, exactly. Well, I think there's definitely an element of the experience which you're massively missing without the audio on. The music and the sound.
Absolute travesty,
is perhaps 50% or maybe even more than 50%, of the experience, of the playing experience. So, I encourage you, I more than encourage you to play with sounds on.
Yeah.
We should just take that option out of our game and just force everyone to play with music on.
We should have no volume controls.
Well,
there shouldn't be any volume controls in RuneScape.
Well, you don't have volume controls in film or TV. Yet we have volume controls in games. It's really. I mean, I could go on about for hours about this. I'm not going to start. But I'll start.
But then again, that's because a lot of people watch movies whilst playing games. But you can't really watch a movie whilst watching a movie. So in other words, if you're playing a game, you might want to just kind of level up your get them gains, but you don't necessarily want to kind of hear it because you're busy watching, I don't know, whatever series that you're watching at the time.
You can turn off the sounds from a movie at times if you're watching them on demand.
But can you imagine being at the cinema and just can I just turn my sound off?
That's totally different.
Right, I've got the totals for you. So there was 450 individual sound effects, which range from each one of those little tiny picks to the more complicated kind of longer sounds like discovering materials and whatnot. And we've got 23 music files, which vary from the kind of the actual theme through to little jingles as well as music for all the areas. This is a pretty big project.
It's been absolutely massive. I mean, that's about 480 if I do some quick maths. I don't know if my quick maths are on point today, but that's 480 different files that have been edited and everything else. That's just impressive.
And of course the music files are the ones that really, obviously take even longer to do, because it's hard to write one piece of music in a day. But I mean, the amount of sound effects in the game total now is, I think we're looking at 150,000 or something like that now. Might be able to get you that data.
That was the follow-up question. Yeah, Dr. Goliath was asking. Naughty Matty was asking how many sounds are there in total in the game.
It'll probably take my Windows machine longer to count the amount of sounds than it will to
to play them.
to give you the number. I'll find out as soon as it's counted it up. It's just
cool.
a little bit.
All right. Shall we, in the meantime? Shall we? Yeah, we'll move on to the archaeology music in general then, because we've talked a lot about the sound effects, and you already alluded to, like, we added 23 new music tracks to jingles as well. How do we get to the music themselves? Because that is a very different process, I imagine, compared to the sound effects themselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, music. Yeah, so music's a different. There is some kind of relationship between sound effects and music. Certainly, sometimes we go quite close to kind of mixing between the two. But somewhere like this piece of content, archaeology, I mean, it's taking place in all sorts of different areas. So you've got Al-Kharid, and then you've got the Warforge, and you've got Everlight and stuff. These areas are completely different. So you have to really be quite diverse with the music, and you have to switch between different styles. Once you've covered one area, then you have to kind of rethink, if you like, and then get your mindset into a brand new area. You have to kind of play the content, look at the art, and get absorbed into an area so you can get the feel for it when you're playing through the content. That's how I tend to, when I'm composing music, I like to do it with sound effects in the background. So I'll kind of have like if I'm making sound effects for an area, the first thing I'll do is put a big palette of sounds together. So I'll have kind of, if I'm doing a sound for, the Warforge, there'll be things like rumbles and hammers and rocks and whatnot. I'll have all those playing in the background, and then that will help me to kind of get in the mood to compose the music with. And then you have to get sucked into the atmosphere, and then write the music.
Is it a bit similar to like how you sometimes see artists create a mood board when they're going to make a piece of art, that they get lots of reference pictures together and then they just put these all out, and then they kind of create their music, or they compose their piece of art? Is it similar to audio, where you kind of get all kinds of different sounds that kind of are similar or interesting, or that you vibe with in that piece of content, and then you go from there?
Do you want to answer that one, Mr. Surma?
Yeah.
I'd say yeah, definitely, very much so. For me, yeah.
I think
making palettes,
Yeah. I think I think there's loads of different ways of doing it. Like I personally, I think my approach to what Ian just said is a bit different. I'm not a fan of making a palette necessarily, but I like to use like what an artist has that drawn, like concept art, for example. And I really kind of I guess you feed on that for my inspiration, really. But I find I think everyone's got a slightly different approach.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a wrong approach to begin with.
I mean, a lot of it is about immersion, because we're producing content for the game, so it's got to try and kind of fit with the game. So that means playing the game, looking at the assets in the game, getting absorbed in that piece of content that's going in. That's one of the things that we like the most. And because I'm just kind of looking at the contents regarding kind of music and whether people sort of like the music or not. I mean, I kind of I like to kind of muck about and say, oh, that's it. If you don't listen to the music, then I don't want to ever talk to you again. But we do realise that, of course, people can play the game however they want. That's the reason why we give people volume controls at the end of the day. And it's not for us to say you've got to listen to the music or you've got to listen to the sound effects, but what we want to try and do is encourage people to do it, because we hope that it makes it a nice experience for them. But it's up to the players how they want to play the game.
Yeah, that's true.
Would
I
we
mean, a lot
want
of people
to?
don't have the music on, but they put sounds on, or they might want to put the music on for a new piece of content.
I'm going to ask to you both what's handy. Would we want to listen to a bit to one of the archaeology songs, and you want to comment on that or explain it after, or we want to explain a bit about it first and then go into it after?
Yeah, let's play. I mean, we might not need to play the theme, because I'm sure that's been heard a lot of times. But if you'd like to play the Everlight track.
I can see
The idea
Surma
here,
going
right?
well.
This is the track. Time is the key, and this, the kind of the area is gorgeous that it takes place in, because it's kind of underneath the Everlight area, and there's like fountains kind of underneath. There's a puzzle that you have to do. I don't know if I don't want to give any spoilers to anyone, obviously, but I wanted the mood to be kind of like quite light, and sort of something you can kind of just go and gently kind of hum along to, because obviously when you're training, you do that. You can train for quite a long time. The music's got to be livable with, if you like, and try and match the area.
I almost don't want to really speak.
So I like this kind of
music. Oh, yeah. I think I totally, and especially for a skill like archaeology, you don't want like boss music, whilst you're kind of just
exactly.
doing your. So something like this is just so nice and chill, just to
try and we try and make the tracks quite long as well. When we go, look at that fantastic mix, there you go, you got the real world experience of rock picking and listening to the Everlight music. That's it, you got a job. So yeah, hopefully it kind of all comes together and creates a nice kind of atmosphere. But the reason why I chose that one is because for this project I thought, I kind of, as you can see from behind me, I've got like a telephone exchange sized musical instrument, a synthesizer. It's a modular synthesizer, but I do have quite a lot of musical gear at home because I've been into it since a teenager. So there's a picture there in the share called RuneScape. That is another instrument that I own, which is a little modular synthesizer. I did tweet about this before, but the modular synthesizers, that thing there is actually producing probably about 25-30% of the sounds that's been played in the tune that you're listening to. Not the piano parts, but the kind of rhythmic part, the bass parts, and various sort of tonal stuff that's underneath. But that is of quite a modern system, which you can buy these separate little modules and kind of plug them in, and you configure your synthesizer to be whatever you want. But for some reason, I thought I'd use a very modern piece of equipment to do music for quite an ancient area, because I quite like that sort of juxtaposition in things. And it just seemed to deliver some of the tones that I wanted. I wanted a bit of smooth, kind of rounded, satisfying kind of tones, and that synth just seemed to have the sounds to hand that I wanted.
Would you be able to explain a little bit like how a synthesizer works, or how that machine kind of works? Because I just see a lot of buttons and wires. Like,
yeah, of course. I mean, like a standard keyboard synthesizer, whatever, if you like, has you select a sound and then you play it on your keyboard, and then you might use a menu or some switches or a dial or buttons or something to go through and switch between your banks of sounds, and then you pick it. That kind of synth that's behind me, and the little Euroac modular, which is the one that I just showed you, they haven't got any kind of fixed path. They all these modules do something specific, like one will make a noise, one will be an amplifier, one will mix, but it's up to you how you kind of configure the thing and then how you put it together. So that is kind of geared towards being a little sort of a beatboxy kind of ambient kind of toolkit for me. It's like having a little kind of mini sound laboratory or something like that. And obviously, we use all sorts of different equipment, and we use lots of stuff that's based on our computers. But I like working with physical controls because it kind of I don't know, it sort of inspires me, and it helps me to become more creative when I've got sort of things to actually, you know, press and control and switch and touch. I think it sort of does something with the mind and kind of gets you sort of more creative. But everyone's got their own ways of working.
And I think, you know, especially how like Ian has like his physical appreciation for like gear and synthesizers, whereas myself, I don't have such an appreciation. Because you know I grew up with more software stuff. Just simply,
apart from the lovely acoustic instruments that you've got, though, for instance, because I haven't really got much in the way of acoustic. I've got some bongos, and I've got some little drums, and I use the works accordion, but I don't have all the lovely string stuff that you've got.
Yeah, you know, so you know, I'm a big guitar player, mandolin player, and I also have this kind of very beautiful instrument from Ukraine called a bandura, and it just sounds majestic and really, really magical.
I just love how both of you have a very own distinct style in making the audio, but then even when you listen to it in game, it's like one coherent sound, and you don't even notice that it just blends so perfectly, in my opinion, which I think is great.
Of course, we do work together. I mean, the whole team. Sometimes we work collaboratively on projects, and we've even kind of added to each other's sort of musical compositions and stuff like that. But you know, at least we will, you know, have a shared vision of what we want, and we'll kind of, you know, work and talk with each other all the way through a project's lifeline. Yeah, that's really important.
Were there a couple of other aspects of like making the archaeology music songs, the songs themselves, or do you think we've talked about everything we want to talk about there?
Well, only that something I would have liked to have done was to do some more live recording of instruments on that. That would have been the thing that I'd have liked to have done with that music, because, you know, sometimes you have to kind of go acoustic, and then, you know, I'm not a flute player, for instance, I'm not a flautist, but I wanted to have some nice flute passages. So because we didn't have the time at the time to, you know, get someone in to play the flute, then you have to use what is available to us. So, you know, we always have to, there's always a balance between kind of compromising and then, you know, going as far with something as you can by, you know, using your own instruments, your own voice, or whatever you can. And if something's not available, you have to try and find it, or come up with an alternative.
Okay. Favorite track
out of music's,
all the
music's a difficult thing to kind of pin down. Sorry to interrupt. You know, music, the inspiration can kind of like come at stupid times, like 1 o'clock in the morning or something. I might get an idea, and it's like, I really want to go to bed now, and then I'll have to try and kind of hum it to myself into my phone so that I can remember it, you know, or make these cryptic little notes. Like, I mean, some of the notes that I've made on how I'm going to write music, I look at them the next day and I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? I've got not a clue what I was trying to kind of get out of my brain. You know, that's one of my personal problems, is that I kind of, you know, when I'm composing, I tend to think of everything all in one go, and then so I'll think, oh, that percussion's, you know, I'm kind of hearing a piece of music in my head, and then it's like, well, all well and good, now I have to extract that into 16 different separate parts and record them. So then you have to kind of keep going backwards and forwards. But that's my process. Learn shorthand. Yeah, well, I do have some kind of like sort of shorthand. I'm just reading odd comments here and there. I do have kind of, you know, some of this cryptic notes I do understand, but some of it is just does not make any sense to me.
All right. Favorite song of Archaeology then, to round up before we're going to move on a bit?
Favorite song?
Is it?
I'll let you pick that, Mr. Surma, because you didn't write any of the music for Archaeology, did you?
I didn't know. I'm just trying to think.
I can't pick one of my own songs, can I?
I'm a massive fan of Everlight, I'm also a massive fan of. Oh, I'm just getting the list up here. No, is it?
Star Lodge is a good one.
Oh, Howl's Floating Workshop. That is a tune.
Oh yeah, that's a
Howl's,
cool one.
I think that was done by Mod Slippers, if I'm correct. And I use that in one of the trailers, and it's just really cool. Really
Okay.
cool tune.
So if it's part of the trailer, we might hear a little bit of it later, though.
That's a different trailer.
Oh, okay. Unlucky. Okay. Did you have a favorite as well, Ian? You can pick your own songs as well.
I think probably the Star Lodge. I really like the mood on that one.
Okay.
I just thought that was a little bit different. And I love listening to other people's like tracks more than my own. I mean, I'm a typical kind of musician. I'll spend like hours, days, years, whatever, months writing a piece of music, and then I'll just hate it afterwards. Typical muso. Never likes what they do. And then begrudgingly has to go, oh, okay, maybe it was okay tune, but it's like, everything that I've ever produced I'd like to improve, really. But that's just what happens with people, isn't it?
Yeah, no, very understandable. You
But I
mentioned
do really
a little
like
bit
what
earlier.
other people. Yeah,
Sorry, say it again.
That's right. Carry on.
Okay, we'll carry on then. You mentioned a little bit earlier about like you would have loved to record an actual flute player play a couple of sounds that you could record.
That would be good.
In the past, we have where were we? We've actually
We
had
have done.
people. We have done, and we've also had people singing phrases, and we've used those in our audio sets. Is that something you would like to do
Yeah,
more of in the
absolutely.
future again?
We are absolutely going to do that again. Yeah, I mean, obviously, with the present kind of situation aside, we're absolutely got some great content to work on this year. Excuse me, and we absolutely want to be recording some more musicians when we can. So hopefully, watch this space, and hopefully, you'll get some more.
Okay, cool. Then there was a question from Opalium. I'll ask it. I think it's a little bit similar to a question we already had. What's the most bizarre or unusual experience you've had trying to record a sound effect? Is there anything that stands out?
It probably is trying to record one. I don't think there's have been any kind of real sort of like disaster type scenarios or anything like that. I think probably when that dog went to the toilet in the
I was thinking the same.
the audio area, wasn't that like a good example of where something odd happened?
I did forget about that. But
Never
gosh,
work with
yeah,
animals
wow.
or children, though, right?
I mean,
Never work with animals or children.
that's what you'll get in return. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I can't think of anything that's really happened to me. I might have, I generally, when I'm kind of mucking about, I did some recording of like metal and glass not too long ago, and I ended up kind of like breaking a few things and kind of made a bit of a mess of my living room, cut my finger, knocked over a few things. I haven't got any photos of that, but yeah, that kind of stuff. But that's, I call that just an occupational hazard. Something you have to put up with if you want to, be a pro sound designer. You've got to take the pain.
You do.
Someone.
I do remember actually when it was a little bit before Jagex, but I had a great opportunity where I could go actually onto a gun range and do some gun recordings, and I was like, wow, this is exciting stuff. So, lots of health and safety, obviously, and but the experience was really, really great. And towards the end of the session, the chap who owned the gun range was saying, "Oh, hey, I have a mortar. Do you want to record that? Like a small explosive." And I was like, "Oh, okay. This is getting a bit scary." And so we got ready. All our microphones were set up, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be the best sound of my career. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be massive." And then, poof, that's it. The sound was just.
That's a really good point, because that's what you was talking about earlier on, that like sometimes you record something and you think it's going to be amazing, and it just turns out as absolutely nothing like what you think it is. And yet something else that you record that you think is going to be like a giant pine cone or brushing a piece of wood could be actually exactly what you want. But that's all, you don't know until you try this sort of stuff. It's all about being creative. But I appreciate we're running low on time, and I can see, by the way, Poerkie, there's quite a few questions. Perhaps you could direct our lovely players to our Twitter accounts, and we'll be really happy to go into some more detail of stuff.
Oh yes, I'll do the plug now. I was going to do that at the end. I'll do it at the end again. But
it's only just because I've seen quite a lot of questions that I'd probably like to answer, but I haven't really got the time at the moment.
So there's you can find both Mod Surma and Mod IanT on Twitter with JegX Surma and JegX IanT. Like I said, they are. If you've got a question, tweet at them, and they'll try their best to answer that for you and give you a fun fact. Before we're going to move on, even though I'm aware of time, there was one of the questions in there that is probably for you, Mod IanT, which I'm personally interested in as well. And this was from Biggest Bobbers. Is Andrew Gower's mom bacon frying still the cooking sound, or has it changed since?
No,
it has changed.
That changed. No, that changed because we brought in our kind of like our Jag effects synthesizer. Basically, right, the original sound effects were in there, and they obviously took a certain amount of file size space. But then I was given the synthesizer to play with to make sound effects. When in fact the brief for me was to make some magic sound effects, but I just made everything else as well. And then we found that they didn't really fit anymore, because there was only I think it was about 12, 20 or whatever it was, sort of sound effects, not many. And then when I started to use a synthesizer, it turned into hundreds. And then we just decided to go for that because the file size from the sounds from that synthesizer are tiny. They're kind of 4K, 6K each. So tiny, which is one of the important things where, in RuneScape's early days, was to keep everything as small as you possibly could.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that little bit of extra info. So I just find it very fascinating to hear about.
Yeah, not a problem.
Well, do we want to move on to archaeology trailers and a bit of the VO kind of aspects as well?
Absolutely, let's go.
Do you take it away, Mod Surma?
Yeah, absolutely. So for archaeology, we had lots of kind of marketing and trailer assets that we had to produce, and for one or maybe two, I think it was for one trailer in particular, we went to a chalk pit, and I think I have a small video showing the location of this area. Oh, is it? Yeah. Oh, I have to.
Oh, it's in portrait.
Yeah, always a big mistake. But you can see that it was a very wet and windy day, so it was absolutely not ideal for doing any kind of film or sound recording. But we persevered, and we still managed to get some good results. And with it being chalk, yeah, standard summer.
We're not hearing this out. I'm just checking if that's purposely done by a producer right now.
That's okay. And then here's a next.
Okay, yeah. So it is purposely hidden, but it is basically the wind just going in there the whole time. So it's not really usable.
And here's just a shot of it was quite difficult to get any kind of good footage because it was very wet, very windy, and I had my sound recording equipment. So I was kind of just trying my best to get some sort of footage. So anyway, so here you can see Mod Timbo in the background, getting ready to be recorded. What else? Oh yes, and this particular scene was quite a famous, well not famous, but perhaps a popular scene among some people. So if we can roll the next
Infamous.
video.
Timbo.
Infamous.
Timbo.
With sound, perhaps.
Timbo. What? Benches. Benches. What? Like benches? Yeah, benches. All right. Cheers, mate.
So there you go.
Oh,
so like this was a very interesting scene.
Benches, to be exact.
Because obviously we had Mod Timbo in this massive area, so we had to make it realistic that he was actually in this space. So I added some kind of like delay effect to make that kind of slap sound against the kind of the rocks in that area. And of course Dave O's dialogue and audio didn't really require much editing because it was quite close. But you know, like, but obviously because of the day itself, it was very windy and wet. We had to kind of do a lot of post editing to make it sound not windy and not wet, to make it sound suitable for the trailer. And then for the launch trailer itself, we decided that it would be a great idea to use some VO, a voice actor, to kind of present what archaeology is all about, really. And I think that went down really well, and that's something which we want to do more in the future, you know, when the opportunity like that kind of arises. And so, yeah, we can just maybe play the launch trailer a little bit now.
We've broken through the clouds and reached the depths of our world. Yet, in search of answers, we find only mysteries. Who knows what power we may find in the dust? Our world's history is violent. Countless civilizations lost to war. 5 dig sites, each shrouding relics of times forgotten. The God Wars are a distant memory, but our struggle is yet to bear. The sands of time whisper of greater threats. If history has taught us anything, it's that peace seldom lasts. The tale of our past is written, but our future story is yours to forge. Dig deep. War is coming.
There we go.
There you go. So, you know, and I think, you know, in combination with the sound effects, the music, which was by Mod Slippers, by the way, and then the VO on top, it just all kind of makes us really cinematic, and I just think a great experience, a great trailer, really, to promote archaeology.
I mean, the video on its own is already amazing, but I like the audio in particular in this video just adds like that additional layer on top for me, and I'm like, it really blows you away, kind of. And I really like you've got at some point you see the Archaeology logo where you've got like this slow beat, a very serene sound, and then you're back in the action. I just find it, personally, I find it one of the best trailers so far.
Well, it's a really cool piece of content to work on, though. It was genuinely like really good fun because, you know, we like working on interesting stuff at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Whenever you've kind of like got really cool areas to look at and like maybe kind of, you know, either kind of cool creatures or cool places or something like that, that's the thing that really helps us when we're being creative, because it kind of drags us in and then hopefully gets us to produce something that's nice and fitting.
Any, out of curiosity, how long-ish have we worked together on like the trailer, or how long has the audio department worked on that? Is it like a long process?
On this trailer?
Yeah.
Actually, well, I seem to remember this trailer very, very, very well. I'm kind of glad that this question was asked, because just as this trailer was being created and produced, the lockdown was beginning. And I remember I was driving home actually from Jagex HQ to my place, and I get a text message saying that the archaeology trailer has to be finished by tomorrow. And I was like, oh my god, the video isn't even hardly finished yet. We need to get everything done and sorted. So we really kind of spent the next kind of 6 hours really quite like an intense 6 hours it was, just working on this trailer, putting everything together, going back and forth for kind of like, what do you think of this? Maybe we can do this and that. So on this particular trailer, it was quite you could feel that the deadline was approaching, so you had to get that done. But it's not always like that. But I think in this circumstance, perhaps it worked out quite well. Diamonds aren't, what's the expression? Diamonds are created under pressure. So there you go. That's maybe that's the way
There's lots of
forward.
individual bits to that, though, isn't there? As you say, like because it's got the VO, then obviously you have to factor in the time to get the VO recorded in the studio and delivered back to you, so that you can put it in. And then, of course, the sound effects kind of pass, and the music are all both kind of separate things, which are created quite often separately and then kind of brought together and then sort of mixed. So can take a while to do some of these videos.
And like, you know, and trailers in particular are very, you know, you really have to think about how a trailer like evolves over time and how it kind of breathes, and like when at what point is like the kind of the most important part, and when does it then relax again? You kind of build this tension, and then you release the tension at the end. So like to me in that trailer, it was just I can't remember what VO line it was, but it was there's like this big crescendo towards the end, and then everything just dies down, and you hear the voice quite you know, kind of sinister, you know, in a sinister tone, just saying, "Dig deep, war is coming." So you know that kind of that emphasis worked really well, you know, on that particular moment.
Okay. I would like to slowly start wrapping it up. We're already a couple of minutes past, which is not a problem on its own, but I would like for you all to enjoy the evening as well. What I would urge is if you've got a question for mod IanT or mod Surma, ask them on Twitter, JagXSurma and JagXIanT. At the same time, I would also like to give a little bit of a shout out to the fellow audio team members, which are Mod Slippers, Mod Grace, and Mod Lord. I think
right.
all three of them are also on Twitter, so make sure to see what they're up to as well. The whole audio team makes amazing work, so check them out.
I mean, Mod Grace and Mod Slippers both wrote music, which is included in Archaeology as well.
So make sure to do that, and tag them if you've got questions. I saw a couple of them, so please do that. And then before we go, I'm going to do the housekeeping chores again quickly. On Thursday we're going to be back with some more tutorials. So we're going to continue talking about learning the ropes. So we'll be back on Thursday at 5 p.m. for that. There will be Motsu and me who will be talking about more tutorials. So if you like that, make sure you set an alarm. I would love to see all of you there. And then the very last time I'll be saying specifically this one, Twitch Prime, 14 days of free membership if you get that. So make sure you get your Twitch Prime and get those 14 days of free membership. Is there anything that one of you two would like to say before we're gonna head off?
Thanks for having us. Really.
Yeah, well,
And,
no, I'd like to just say, you know, really thanks ever so much for people who kind of, you know, have sent me, well, personally and to the team, you know, people often just take time to come out and just kind of pop something on my Twitter saying, oh, you know, like I love the music that you've made before, and it's just like we get it that not everyone's going to like it, that what we make, obviously. You know, everyone's got their own taste, but I really, you know, genuinely kind of, you know, heartfelt thanks for people for supporting us, and you know, and just for these little comments, it kind of really brightens up your day. So, you know, cheers, thanks for that.
I mean, I'm going to amend that, and that is, I think, as the RuneScape community is very good at saying what they don't like, but it's also good to say the things that you do like, and in particular tell those JMods, because it does really make it can really make their day, as weird as it sounds as well.
Get some absolutely cracking comments from people who just take time out of their day just to kind of say thanks. You know what I mean? It's like it means a lot.
Absolutely. Cool. Then, without further ado, look after yourselves and tot ziens.